You're listening to Trace Hunt Radio. We explore the darkest chapters of true crime, unsolved mysteries, cold cases, and the twisted minds behind them. Follow the blood, chase the clues, uncover the truth. Stay sharp, the hunt begins now. It was the first week of November 2002 in Botham, Colorado, a quiet, frostbitten town cradled by rusted train lines and abandoned smokestacks. The kind of place where secrets froze deep beneath cracked asphalt and silence was just another language. 16-year-old Emily Wharton vanished on a Tuesday evening. She was last seen leaving Crest Hill Public Library at 6:48 p.m. Surveillance footage showed her clutching a canvas book bag, wearing a navy coat too large for her frame. Her hair was tied back, face flushed from the wind. She turned the corner onto Ashgrove Street and was never seen again. When her mother, Laurie, called the police that night to report her missing, the officer on duty replied with routine detachment. Teenagers run off. Give it 48 hours. She'll be back. But Emily didn't come back. Laurie Wharton worked the overnight shift at a nursing home. That night, she'd returned to their two-bedroom apartment past 7 p.m. and found the lights off. Emily was never late, not without texting, not without calling. She asked the neighbors. No one had seen Emily. Some shrugged, some didn't bother to answer. It was that kind of building, peeling wallpaper, muffled shouting behind doors, and long hallways that smelled of damp carpet and forgotten meals. Laurie spent the entire night pacing, phoning, checking with school friends. She printed flyers the next morning and handed them out at the high school. The principal offered her a tired look and a cardboard smile. We'll let the students know. Please take care of yourself. But the truth was no one cared. Emily was quiet, the kind of girl people remembered, vaguely smart, polite, always reading. She kept to herself, wore headphones on the bus, never had many friends. She was, to most, invisible. What no one knew was that Emily had spent weeks being followed. First, subtle things: scratch messages on her locker door, a note under her seat in history class, "You don't belong here," a cold stare from Carson Doyle across the lunchroom. Carson was 18, athletic, dangerous in the way of boys who believed rules were made for others. His father was a respected cop in town. He and his three friends, Matt, Ricky, and Cole, were always at the edge of trouble, yet never held accountable. 3 weeks before her disappearance, Emily had reported them for cornering her behind the school gym. Nothing physical, just threats, leering remarks, Carson whispering something about the glass box. No action was taken. In a town like Botham, people whispered instead of acting. And when girls like Emily vanished, it became rumor before it became tragedy. By the end of the week, local gossip had twisted the story. She probably ran away with some guy. Heard she wanted to move to Denver anyway. You know how dramatic girls get at that age. It wasn't until the 10th day that her case was officially listed as a missing persons investigation. By then, every trace of her had gone cold. No footprints, no eyewitnesses, no phone activity. But Emily hadn't run away. She was still in Botham, less than 2 miles from her home. Hidden beneath the remains of an old pharmaceutical factory, she sat in a sealed glass enclosure, what used to be a contamination observation room. The walls were lined with one-way mirrors and yellowed medical charts. The air was thick with mildew and chemical rot. Emily was locked inside, the door bolted from the outside. Every day, Carson and his friends returned. They called it a game. They called her the display. They brought food sometimes, just enough to keep her conscious. Sometimes they forgot. Sometimes they wanted to see what she'd do without it. Emily stopped screaming on the 4th day. She learned they liked it better when she was quiet. A week later, a janitor at the school mentioned something odd to a teacher: how Emily's locker had been emptied. The books were gone. Her favorite bookmark was in the trash. The teacher shrugged. Maybe she cleaned it out before she left. At the same time, a boy in her homeroom noticed Carson's group skipping classes more often. returning with muddy shoes and bruised knuckles. But in Botham, patterns didn't matter unless someone with a badge paid attention. The badge in question, Sergeant. Doyle was too busy covering for his son's latest traffic citation. On the 18th day, a woman walking her dog along the old factory path noticed a glimmer in the ground, a cracked window, reflecting morning frost. She peered in, seeing only shadows. She told her husband that night. He said not to go near that place again. Kids shoot up in there, he warned. Nothing but trouble. She never called the police. Emily was still alive, but the town had already let her die. Beneath the collapsed roof of the Blackridge Pharmaceutical ruins, time crawled differently. Light didn't enter the place naturally, it seeped in like memory through cracks in old trauma. The glass room, once a sterile observation unit, was now a prison. Emily lay curled on the floor. Her skin had grown pale, translucent almost, under the dim yellow of a battery-powered lamp they left suspended above her. The concrete walls around her were smeared in fingerprints, some hers, some not. She no longer asked why, only how long. The boys came at irregular hours, always with a joke. Carson, of course, was the leader. He had nicknames for the others: Doc for Matt, who wore surgical gloves; Prophet for Cole, who filmed everything on an old camcorder with no battery; and Nurse Ricky, who carried a toolbox filled with objects Emily had stopped identifying. "Time for our daily therapy," Carson said on day 21. He always spoke in mock professionalism. "Let's check on our patient, boys." She stopped reacting. It was the only power she had. Carson didn't like that. "She's breaking character," he muttered, kneeling to her level beyond the glass. "We'll fix that tomorrow." Emily stared through him. Behind him, she caught a glimpse of the camcorder's blinking light. The battery had been replaced. They were recording again. Above ground, Laurie Wharton was becoming a problem. She'd stopped sleeping, stopped working. Her days were spent stapling flyers to telephone poles, her nights going door to door in the snow. She gave up on the police. Instead, she walked the town alone with a flashlight and a thermos of coffee that had long gone cold. She begged the news to take interest. They gave her a 20-second local slot. Narrated with hollow pity. Emily's photo flashed briefly on the screen. Wide eyes, hair in a braid, missing front tooth from middle school. That was the last time the town saw her face. Officer Nate Sorrell was new to the Botham PD, 27, fresh out of Denver Metro transfer. He was too idealistic for his own good. He saw Laurie in the waiting room that week, shaking, holding a folder of notes and names. She looked like a mother who was already grieving. "No one's followed up on this?" he asked, reading her timeline. The receptionist shrugged. "Doyle's handling it." Sorrell didn't trust Doyle. No one did. Not really. His son's name came up twice in the report. Once in Emily's school complaint. Once in an anonymous tip that had been crossed out with red pen. He took the folder. Quietly, he began his own investigation. Emily marked the days with blood. She'd cut a piece of her own fingernail and used it to ETCH small lines into the metal floor drain. 23, at last count. Her mind played tricks now. She heard humming when the room was empty. Saw lights flicker without source. Her body ached constantly. Her mouth was always dry. They never let her clean herself. She once asked for water. Carson spat it through the vents. Back above, Sorrell tracked down one of Emily's classmates, Jenna Lang, a quiet girl who'd once shared English class with her. "Emily was scared," Jenna said. "She told me she thought someone was watching her after school. She kept seeing this car." "What kind of car?" "Black pickup, old, loud engine." "Carson Doyle drives one." It wasn't a confession, but it was enough to raise flags. Sorrell looked into Carson's alibis the night of Emily's disappearance. They were shaky. One of his friends claimed they were just playing poker, but couldn't name who won or where. The phone pings didn't align. One tower showed Carson's number near the river that night, close to Blackridge ruins. Sorrell approached Sergeant Doyle with the findings. The old man barely glanced up. "My son's clean. You want to dig holes, be my guest. But don't come crying when you fall into one." The message was clear. Drop it. Sorrell didn't. Day 25. Emily collapsed. The boys found her unconscious. Carson panicked briefly, but then he smiled, as if inspired. Now she looks perfect, just like in those paintings. He posed her body, moved the light above her, and asked Cole to film. Matt watched silently. Ricky vomited in the corner. She's art now, Carson whispered. Like marble in a glass cage. Sorrel returned to the path behind the school. He found the camera pole where Carson's truck was once spotted parked. Something shined in the grass, half a chain link bracelet. Laurie confirmed it belonged to Emily. He went to the Blackridge ruins next. The place was sealed off with rusted fencing, but he pushed through. His flashlight scanned the broken glass, the old medical crates, the graffiti-covered doors. One passage led beneath the ground. Then, something caught his eye, a single boot print. Faint, but fresh. Sorrel's breath caught in his throat. There was someone down there. Officer Nate Sorrel stood frozen at the edge of the stairwell, his breath forming tight clouds in the cold air of the Blackridge ruins. The boot print was small, too small to be Carson's. It pointed inward, toward the darkness below, and was barely outlined in dirt and concrete dust. Recent, he tightened his grip on the flashlight. He hadn't told anyone he was here. No backup, no warrant, just instinct, and the sharp certainty that Emily Wharton hadn't vanished, she'd been taken. He moved down the steps. The air thickened. He passed broken tiles, mold-covered walls, and half-collapsed metal beams. Then came the hallway, long, unlit, and silent as death. And at the end of it, a door, glass. Behind that door, Emily stirred. Pain came in waves. She no longer cried. Her throat wouldn't allow it. She had hallucinated before, faces in corners. Footsteps without source, but the sound felt real. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Not the usual boys, not the laughter. These steps hesitated. She lifted her head, only barely, and then a silhouette. A flashlight. Emily didn't speak. She couldn't, but the faintest glimmer returned to her eyes. Sorrel's voice shook. Emily, no response. But she was alive. He reached for the door handle. Locked. Thick. Reinforced glass. He couldn't break it without alerting anyone above ground. His fingers trembled as he radioed for backup, but static answered. He stepped back, scanned the hallway, and found a control panel half smashed beside the door. A keycard slot blinked red. A name was scratched onto the metal beneath, M. Doyle. Of course. He cursed. Then he did what desperation demands, ran. Laurie was standing outside the precinct when Sorrel returned, breathless and pale. You found something, she said before he could speak, didn't you? He nodded. She's alive. But we need a warrant. Now, she followed him inside. But it wasn't Sergeant Doyle who greeted them. It was Captain Henley, already waiting in the lobby with arms folded. You shouldn't have been at Blackridge, he said. That area's condemned. You could have gotten hurt. Sorrel stepped forward. There's a girl down there, Captain. She's been missing for nearly a month. I saw her with my own eyes. We need a team. Henley didn't blink. No warrant. No entry. Laurie stepped in. If you won't send one, I will. The press, the papers, someone will care. That made Henley pause. A long beat. Then, finally, you've got 12 hours. After that, this is off the books. Back at the Doyle residence, Carson lit a cigarette with a steady hand. Matt was pacing. Ricky had locked himself in the bathroom for over an hour, and Cole was quiet to quiet. He found the place. Carson said, his voice flat. Saw her. This ends now. Matt's eyes were wide. We didn't sign up for murder. Man, she's a kid. Carson snapped. She was a kid. She's a symbol now. You don't get it. She's part of something bigger. Cole finally spoke. She dies, and we die with her. You think they'll believe you didn't act alone. That silenced the room. Emily awoke to movement. The light above her flickered again. This time, not from dying batteries, but from a change in power. She heard scraping above. Voices muffled through the vents. She closed her eyes. Would they end it tonight? Sorrel returned to Blackridge with 2 officers who still believed in Justice Samantha Tran and Luis Ochoa. They brought bolt cutters, body cams, and one silent promise: they'd bring her out alive. By 3:17 a.m., they breached the sub-basement. Sorrel led the way. This time, he brought a crowbar. He reached the glass door again. No one else was there yet. But time was running short. With a swing, the glass cracked. Emily flinched. Another swing. The door buckled, the lock bent. One final strike, and the glass burst inward like ice. Emily didn't move. She barely breathed. Sorrel stepped forward, whispering like to a wounded animal, "It's over. You're safe." She fainted in his arms. Carson arrived at Blackridge 10 minutes later. He was alone, no crew, no camera. Just a pistol in his coat and an obsession in his blood. He reached the lower corridor and saw the broken glass, the door, empty. He screamed. By sunrise, the media had flooded Botham. Emily's rescue ignited a firestorm. Reporters, lawyers, investigators, suddenly everyone wanted a piece of justice. She was taken to Botham General under police guard. Her injuries were severe fractured ribs, second-degree burns, infections. But she was alive. Laurie never left her side. Emily whispered only 3 words that day: the glass room. Sorrel arrested Carson that evening. He didn't resist, just smiled, as if he'd been waiting. The rest of the crew folded fast. Matt turned state's witness. Cole gave up the footage. Ricky, already broken, confessed everything. But the trial wouldn't begin for months, and the town of Botham had only begun to reckon with the monster it raised. The footage was 2 hours long. No edits, no music, just raw, unflinching reality. Detective Laurie Hahn and Officer Nate Sorrell sat in the dimly lit media room of the precinct, eyes locked to the screen as the confession tape played. Not from the suspects but from the camera. Carson Doyle had once boasted about. The one he said was for truth, for the project. It was all there. The moment Emily was lured into the van by Cole, under the pretense of a documentary interview. Her hesitation, her trust, then darkness. The footage cut to the inside of the glass room. Emily had been bound to a chair, her eyes blindfolded. Carson's voice narrated over the scene, calm and measured, as if directing a film. In this experiment, we study resistance, pain, shame, endurance. This isn't cruelty, it's revelation. He introduced the others on camera. Cole, the engineer, Matt, the observer, Ricky, the hand. They wore masks, but their voices weren't disguised. They didn't need to hide. Not from themselves, not in that place. And for weeks, the footage showed exactly what Emily endured. Laurie paused the video at the 87-minute mark. Her knuckles were white. "This is worse than anything I've seen." Sorrell stood. "We need to seal this. If it leaks, she'll be tried in public all over again." But it was too late. That morning, an anonymous drop was sent to 5 major news networks, a 2-minute clip. Blurred, but unmistakable. A girl, a glass room. The words, utter atrocity. By noon, the internet burned with rage. Outrage poured in from across the country. Hashtags flooded timelines. Justice for Emily trended alongside Blackridge butchers. Protesters appeared outside the Doyle residence, throwing red paint and signs. Inside a courtroom downtown, charges were filed. Carson Doyle, aggravated kidnapping, conspiracy, assault, psychological torture. Matt Russo, accessory to torture. Cole Avery, abduction and surveillance crimes. Ricky Lang, sexual violence and physical assault. But there was a catch. Carson had money. His father, Mitchell Doyle, was a quiet giant head of a private security firm with deep ties to city politics. He hired the best defense team in the state, and their strategy, discredit the victim. Emily, meanwhile, lay in a hospital bed under sedation. Laurie had convinced doctors to keep media away. Sorrell posted a guard round the clock. But trauma leaves traces that medicine can't reach. Emily awoke screaming, not from pain but silence, the absence of chains, the sudden brightness of clean, white sheets. In her dreams, the glass returned. So did the boys, so did the cold. Weeks passed. The prosecution gathered witnesses, former classmates, teachers, even a gas station clerk who'd sold the fake roses Carson left outside her house. But their star witness was Matt Russo. He was the first to break, pleaded guilty in exchange for full testimony. In his deposition, he said, Carson didn't snap. He planned it, for months. He picked Emily because she was quiet, pretty, alone. She wasn't supposed to survive. We filmed everything. He thought people would watch it like performance art. He said it would make her immortal. The public outcry forced the court to act swiftly. A grand jury indicted all four within days. The trial date was set. The city braced for chaos. But then, something unexpected happened. Carson gave an interview in an undisclosed location, dressed in a pressed shirt and flashing the same composed smile. He spoke to a major news network. The interviewer asked if he felt remorse. He replied, "Art demands sacrifice." The next day, the judge issued a gag order. Laurie sat with Emily that night. Her condition had stabilized, but her voice hadn't returned. She handed Emily a notebook and pen. "You don't need to speak. Just write. Anything." Emily's handwriting was shaky, but legible. She wrote, "Why me?" Laurie answered with silence. Then Emily wrote again. "They said I was no one." That broke Laurie. "They were wrong," she whispered. "You're everything now." And they're about to learn what that costs. Back at the Doyle estate, Carson's father paced the study. He wasn't worried about justice, he was worried about legacy. Mitchell Doyle had spent his life building a reputation in the shadows. And now, his son had brought the spotlight. He made a phone call to a man in a suit, unnamed and faceless. Get him out of the country if this goes sideways. But it was already too late. That night, someone leaked the full video archive. Reddit, Telegram, dark forums. It spread like wildfire, unblurred, unedited, unforgiving. The next morning, a crowd formed outside the courthouse. Survivors, mothers, former victims of abuse. They held photos, candles, names, and one sign rose above them all. The girl in the glass room changed everything. The courtroom was silent, yet heavy with electricity. The kind of silence that hums, that waits. Emily Thorne entered flanked by two officers. Her frame was thin, her posture cautious, but she walked on her own. No wheelchair. Number 4. Just a plain black dress and a notebook clutched to her chest. She didn't look at the defendants, but they looked at her. Carson Doyle stared with something like curiosity. Cole Avery shifted in his chair, his jaw tense. Ricky Lang refused to meet her gaze. Only Matt Russo looked hollow, like someone already sentenced. The gallery behind them was filled to the last row: journalists, victims' rights activists, families of abuse survivors, all drawn to the same burning question: would justice be enough? The trial. Prosecutor Amina West paced deliberately as she opened. This case is not about art. It's about control, about cruelty disguised as theory, about a girl who became a canvas for boys, who thought the world owed them something. She presented evidence like scalpel cuts, the footage, the journal Carson kept labeled the Emily thesis, medical reports, psychological assessments, the letters Carson sent to underground blogs under a pseudonym, Cane Glass. Matt's testimony followed. He described the planning in Carson's basement, the drawings, the coded vocabulary they used to dehumanize Emily. They called her Subject Zero, like she was a specimen. He broke down twice. Once when recounting the second week of captivity. She stopped asking to go home. She just asked for a blanket. The defense tried to pivot. Carson's lawyer suggested Emily had gone with them willingly, that the initial consent made later acts ambiguous, but the courtroom wasn't swayed. Neither was the judge. Emily's turn. On the fourth day, Emily took the stand. The room held its breath. She unfolded a page from her notebook and placed it on the podium. Amina nodded. Emily leaned into the mic. "They thought I'd break." Her voice was soft, fractured, but real. "They said no one would believe me, that I didn't matter." She paused. "But I remember everything. Every hour, every laugh, every time they said I was lucky they chose me." Her hands trembled as she turned the page. "I'm not here because I'm strong. I'm here because they were wrong." Silence. Even Carson looked away. Verdict day. 2 weeks later, the jury returned. Guilty on all counts. Carson Doyle, life without parole. Ricky Lang, 70 years. Cole Avery, 55 years. Matt Russo, 20 years. With parole eligibility in 10 for cooperation. Outside, a roar of approval. People wept, held signs, lit candles again, but this time, for survival. Emily didn't stay. She left through the back exit, avoiding the cameras. But she smiled once, quietly, when the courthouse bell rang. Aftermath. The case sparked sweeping reforms. In the months that followed, Blackridge passed a new victims' rights bill dubbed the Glassroom Law. It included protections for psychological torture, victims, mandatory digital trace logs for rentals and surveillance equipment, limits on private interrogation rooms in personal properties. Colleges introduced updated consent education. Documentary networks offered Emily massive sums for her story. She declined. Instead, she co-authored a book, 40 for Days, Surviving the Glassroom, and donated all proceeds to shelters for young abuse victims. Carson in prison. In isolation, Carson continued to write. He sent letters to journalists, full of Nietzsche quotes and twisted metaphors about truth and suffering. No one published them. The world had moved on, or maybe it had just seen enough. 1 year later, Detective Laurie Hahn found herself outside a small bookstore in downtown Blackridge. A banner hung above, "Meet the author, Emily Thorne." She stepped inside. The room was modest, filled with soft light, shelves stacked with copies of the book. Emily stood behind a small desk, smiling nervously as she signed copies. When she saw Laurie, she stood, walked over, no words, just a quiet, strong embrace. Narrators closing. They said Emily would disappear, that no one would remember her face, that the world only cared about victims when they screamed, not when they survived. But the glass room didn't destroy her. It revealed her, and while the walls were gone, the echoes remained in legislation, in justice, in the voice of a girl who once had none. The girl in the glass room became something more than a symbol. She became a reckoning.